Welcome back. The title of this mini lecture is World War II, Part 1. And we're going to talk about 5 terms or themes that, as you read more about this period and learn more about the many ways in which peoples engaged during this time, these can help give you insights into those perspectives and how those experiences, how many experienced this period. So, all right, let's get into this. So, the first term for us to note is interwar period. So, scholars will often talk about the period between the First World War and the Second World War. And one learns about those time periods in a lot of ways. So, one can come at this from the perspective of artistic contributions, from visual arts, from theater, from silent film, and the transitions into talkies. One can look at this from the perspective of musical development and contributions. One can also look at this from the perspective of technologies, from architecture. From the perspective of military technologies, the interwar period is a really important period for understanding what happens during World War II. It's a period in which militaries had taken lessons from the First World War and technologies that they had attempted to introduce in some cases at the end of the First World War. And during the period between the World Wars, had made technological innovations and had also made doctrinal innovations in what they were going to do with those technologies in order to carry out conflict. And so this is going to be the case for things like the use of tanks, but it's also going to be the case for things like the use of aircraft carriers. These are going to become far more commonplace during the Second World War. And this is also going to be the time period for the growth, again, of other kinds of technologies that will start to be introduced and come to have an effect during the Second World War. Another term for us is 1933 and German rearmament. So in 1933, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party come to power in Germany. And what Adolf Hitler begins a process of doing is throwing off the restrictions that had been put onto Germany as a result of the Versailles Treaty and the ending period of the First World War. And part of this is going to be a rather robust effort at rearmament of the German military, which had been limited to 100,000 soldiers as a result of the end of the First World War. So part of the 1930s is a process whereby it's pretty clear Adolf Hitler has desire for empire within Europe and for conflict that will soon come. So this is part of the process of understanding what, kind of how peoples are experiencing life in the 1930s in Europe especially. The third term for us is going to be invasion of China. So by some of this had occurred a few years earlier, but by 1936, 1937 especially, the Japanese military engages in a fairly large-scale invasion of China. Part of this was due to imperial designs on the part of Japan, and it was an incredibly brutal conflict, one that resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Chinese civilians, despite the efforts on the part of Chinese individuals to fight back against this invasion. This particular invasion and its destruction of cities will lead to a number of works and films and writing about all of this. But it's really quite brutal what the Japanese are carrying out here. Now, this is a process that will continue for years in China. This is something that takes us to our next point. So the fourth point is 1939 and Blitzkrieg. Now, if you'd been living in Germany and the 1930s, the ramping up to conflict, the ramping up to violence was something that was happening kind of throughout the 1930s. Europe as well had engaged in sort of appeasement in a way to kind of avoid conflict. But by 1939, this is what's going to happen. So by September 1939, Hitler and the Germans would sort of claim brutality on the part of Poland against Germany, and that this was that violence on the part of Germany then against Poland was a necessary step that needed to be taken. This is, of course, all a pretext that Hitler is looking for, a made-up pretext that Hitler is looking for war. And so the Second World War then begins more so and widens in September of 1939. And this newly more mechanized German military carries out actions against the Polish military, brutally so. Now, Poland fights back quite aggressively, but they are overwhelmed by the Germans as well as by the Soviet Union, and Poland as a country is utterly laid to waste. Despite efforts on the part of Poland to resist. The last term for us is the fall of France. All right, so basically, after Poland falls, Germany would eventually shift its focus to the west, and in the spring of 1940, attack a number of the Low Countries, and then beginning in May of 1940, stage a massive invasion of France, which achieves far more and more quickly than what the German military thought it would, with the result being that they would capture France within a number of weeks. All right. Thank you very much.